After 5 months of exploring our home country, we are on the home stretch. This may be the final leg, but it is far from the simplest. Careful tidal planning is required to negotiate 3 major tidal gates during some of the strongest tides of the year.
We have sailed over 50,000 miles on our 37-foot sailboat Florence, seeking out stunning tropical locations around the world. This season we were looking for something different, so we set out to sail challenging waters and explore spectacular scenery as we circumnavigate our home country. We are Matt and Amy, and this is Sailing Around Britain.
I reckon we can make start point there. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, tacking now. Nicely done.
So we've left Salcombe and we're heading a bit further along the coast in Devon to the River Dart. And we left in the afternoon so that we have the tide with us as we're going past Start Point. But that does mean that we are arriving before sunset, and we're also going to have the tide against us as we're going up the river. So yeah, hopefully we should be able to make some decent progress when we're around the point and we're no longer sailing upwind, so that we get there before it gets dark. What an amazing approach. We just had a dolphin escort as we were approaching the river, and then there's a castle on either side of the river entrance.
The historic town of Dartmouth clings to the steep side of the valley through which the River Dart runs. Its many historic buildings include the Naval College, which trains all of the Royal Navy's officers.
Although the River Dart is easy to enter in the dark, as it's well charted and lit, we're happy to have arrived in time to see our way to our berth at Nos-on-Dart Marina, just up the river from the town.
Since the blue skies we had in Salcombe have disappeared for a couple of days, it is time to do some housekeeping and planning. When sailing around Britain, it is very easy to pull into a marina whenever you need to make use of the facilities. We tend to align these points with bad weather.
So whilst we wait for the laundry to do, we thought we'd come and sit up here in the comfort of the Marina Lounge to plan the next leg of our journey along the south coast. Although there's only 100 miles left till we get back to our home port in the Solent, the tidal planning to get there is actually fairly tricky because there are three main tidal points between here and the Solent. There's Portland Bill, there's St Albans Head, and there's the gate where you come into the Solent through Hurst Narrows. And we really want the tide with us past all of those points, but the tide changes every 6 hours. So that's not going to be possible for us to do all of that on one tide. So now we've got to choose where we have it against us. So we've been looking through the almanac for the tide times and the tidal flows and looking at the weather. We were originally trying to get all the way to the Solent in one go. We decided we're going to break that down and stop in at Studland Bay because that allows us to have the tide with us past Portland Bill and St Albans Head, and then we'll pause there and then we'll take another tide either the next day or the following day through the Needles Channel, in through Hurst Narrows and back into the Solent. Although we've been able to very succinctly say what we're planning to do here, to get to the point of deciding what we're going to do, we've had to look at all of the options. It's actually taken us pretty much all morning of looking at the weather and the tides and different anchorages, whether you can anchor there, whether you have to pick up a mooring, how much the moorings are. So the planning phase of going around Britain is not something which we've really gone into in detail, but it does take a huge amount of time. And you don't really know whether or not you've got it right or wrong until you go and sail that leg. So the plan is that we're going to leave about 9:30 in the morning from here in Dartmouth, and we should arrive about 9:30 in the evening in Studland Bay. We're going to be going against the tide to start with when we leave here, but that means that it should turn with us when we pass Portland Bill and St Albans Head, and it can be up to 3.8 knots across there, so we really need it with us rather than against us at that point, and then it should carry us nicely into Studland Bay. And it's not just one of us that does the planning on Florence, we both do it independently, and then we compare notes to make sure that we're both in agreement and that we're both on board with all the reasons and compromises behind the decisions, the timings, and where we're planning to go.
It's really good to have a plan, but it's still absolutely pouring it down outside, so I think the best thing to do is make use of the unlimited hot water showers before we head back to the boat.
Unfortunately, when we were sailing here from Salcombe, we did have some damage to the window here. The Genoa sheet just flicked when we were tacking, it smashed the bottom corner of the window. And these windows are pretty old now. We actually put these in New Zealand, so I think just the UVs got to them and they got a bit more brittle and it smashed the window and it ripped across here. We tried to tape it back together with this tape, but it's been raining all day and it's just kind of fallen off. So we could actually get that fixed here in the marina because they've got all of the facilities here, sailmakers, chandleries, engineers, so it'd be really easy to get it fixed properly. But since we're only 100 miles from our home port in Port Solent, we're going to just duct tape it back together a bit better for the trip back. And also we're going downwind, so we shouldn't have any waves over the deck on the way back, so it should be okay. Well, it's a beautiful day today. In a way, it's sad to be leaving the marina at Nos. We were really well looked after by the team there. It's a really nice place to stay. But we need to make the most of this weather to get east along the coast, and it looks like an absolutely glamour day for sailing.
Absolutely gorgeous day for sailing today. It's actually been fairly warm for most of the day as well. It's been interesting that in, what are we now, late October, very late October, the temperatures have been warmer than what we were experiencing in Scotland in the summer. It's been a really nice day for sailing, but we have been fighting the tide all the way across Lyme Bay, and we are now approaching Portland Bill with its famous tide race. But theoretically, there shouldn't be a race because our timings have gone to plan, and it's now approaching slack tide, and the tide should then turn with us and help us on our way to Studland Bay. Bought several really easy passage meals for our round Britain, and we haven't really ended up using them because we've just had such good access to fresh food. So figured going around Portland Bill, it's probably the time to dig those out.
Vegetable rice out of a pouch, and 3-bean vegetarian chilli out of a tin, and some cheese on top.
The breeze has just died off as we're approaching Swanage. We're just coming past St Albans Head. The tide's still so strong, it's just taking us sideways. So we're actually steering almost at 90 degrees across it just to get now into the anchorage without getting swept past. But there's a really bright full moon that hopefully is going to help us to spot all the buoys and any pot buoys on the way into the anchorage. Well, we've arrived in Studland Bay. An absolutely stunning, smooth, moonlit sail in here. There is a no anchoring zone. We weren't sure exactly where it is and it was difficult to see in the dark. So we've actually just picked up a mooring just to be safe rather than sorry. But it's so super calm in here. Should be a great night. And it was an absolutely fantastic sail today. Well, it was a dawn start from Studland Bay this morning in order to catch the tide to be with us coming up the Needles Channel past the famous Needles on the end of the Isle of Wight and into the Solent, and hopefully we'll have that most of the way up the Solent all the way towards Portsmouth Harbour. So we're just about to come into the Needles Channel now.
Past the Needles and the Shingles Bank. There was a bit more wave action on the Shingles Bank than I think either of us expected this morning.
And there's an entire tree in the water in front of it.
Oh yeah. Don't want to be hitting that. Should hopefully be a fairly smooth sail up to Portsmouth Harbour. We've got about just under 20 miles left to go. Yeah, turning out into a beautiful day. The sun's coming out.
We've done 2,400 miles, something like that, over the last 5 months. It's really nice to be back. Really looking forward to seeing family. It's nice not to have gone 7 years this time before seeing family.
We've had very few light wind, downwind days on our trip around Britain, and this is only the 5th time we've had the spinnaker up in the entire trip. But it is our favourite sail, and it's great to be able to put it up for the final few miles up the Solent.
Oh, what an amazing final sail of our sail around Britain. I didn't think we'd be sailing into the Solent and Portsmouth Harbour under spinnaker with really nice gentle breezes, and we've got so much tide with us that we're still doing about 8 knots. I feel very lucky to have been able to sail around our home country, especially after we've been away for so many years, and just get to know it better. There are so many places that we've never even visited, never mind by boat.
Sailing back past Porchester Castle towards our home port of Port Solent Marina closed many circles. This is not only where we set off from 5 months ago, it is also where we prepared Florence for her first voyage around the world, and even where a 6-year-old me learned to sail. So despite this being the end point of this adventure, to us it feels like more of a place where adventures start, and we're already planning the next one.
We have had a fantastic time sailing around our home country despite the weather. Next time we'll share the full 2,426 mile story along with the lessons that we learnt along the way. But you'll realise that we finished filming that series back in October, so you might be wondering where we are now. Well, right now, when this video is released, we should be bobbing around somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, sailing across from the Canaries to the Caribbean on a very different boat to Florence. If you can't wait for the videos from that series to come out in March, then you can join the crew over on Patreon, where we have a real-time tracker with daily updates so you can follow along in real time. Thanks for watching.
For extra updates in between these bi-weekly videos, and to find out what we're up to in real time, head over to Patreon and join the crew. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the next episode here on YouTube.
Continuing our voyage on Florence would not be possible without the support of our patrons. Thank you to all of you, and especially to our star patrons.